In the quiet summer of 1947, a thunderstorm rolled across the New Mexico desert. But what crashed to the earth that night was far more than just rain and lightning. It was the beginning of a mystery that would defy explanation for decades, igniting one of the most controversial events in modern history. Something fell from the sky, something no one could identify. And within hours, the United States military descended on a small, remote ranch near the town of Roswell, sealing off the area and beginning a cover-up that would rewrite history before anyone even knew what questions to ask. The truth they buried that night is still fighting to get out. The initial report was a bombshell. The Roswell Daily Record printed a headline that sent shockwaves across the nation. RAAF captures flying disc. For a brief moment, the world believed we were not alone. But just as quickly as the story broke, it was killed. Hours later, the military issued a retraction. A new statement appeared, claiming the object was nothing more than a common weather balloon. It was a simple, dismissive explanation designed to end the conversation. But it was too late. The first story, the real story, was already out, and the people who were there knew the weather balloon was a lie. Eyewitnesses, from the rancher who discovered the wreckage to the military personnel first on the scene, described something far stranger. They spoke of metallic debris unlike anything they had ever seen, thin as foil but impossible to dent or burn. They recalled finding strange, lightweight beams engraved with symbols that belonged to no known language. And they remembered fragments that, when bent, would return to their original shape without a single crease. These were not the remnants of a weather balloon. This was something else entirely. The government's first story was a fabrication, and it wouldn't be their last. Almost as soon as the debris was discovered, a swift and silent operation began. Military trucks arrived at the crash site, their cargo bays loaded with locked crates. Soldiers were sworn to secrecy, ordered to never speak of what they saw. Any photographs taken that night vanished. Official radar logs from the nearby air base were seized. Even the debris that was initially shown to reporters was quickly swapped out for the tattered remains of an actual weather balloon, a deliberate act of deception. The question is simple. Why replace the evidence? You only hide something if you have something to hide. What were they so desperate to conceal? Witnesses reported a sudden and unusual lockdown at the Roswell Army Airfield. Hangars were sealed under armed guard. Key personnel were mysteriously reassigned to distant bases overnight. And in the dead of night, aircraft were seen taking off with heavily guarded, unidentified cargo. Some insiders claimed the wreckage was flown to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, home of the Air Force's top technical and foreign technology intelligence centers. Others believed it was moved to even more secret facilities, places whose names are now synonymous with government secrecy. The evidence was not just collected. It was systematically erased from public view, scattered to black sites across the country, destined to become a ghost in the military machine. Over the following decades, the official story of Roswell continued to shift and unravel. The government issued not one, but several different explanations for the event, each one contradicting the last. First, it was a simple weather balloon. When that explanation was challenged by the sheer number of credible witnesses, the story changed. Years later, they claimed it was a top-secret surveillance balloon from a program called Project Mogul, designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. But even that story didn't fit all the facts. So another explanation emerged. It was a crash test dummy experiment. The constant revisions, the endless backpedaling, it all points to a desperate attempt to find a story, any story that would stick. Why create new explanations unless the old ones were falling apart? Why change the official narrative multiple times unless the original truth was too fantastic or too terrifying to admit? This pattern of deception is not the behavior of an agency reporting a simple accident. It is the behavior of an organization struggling to contain a truth it can no longer control. The multiplying stories became a smokescreen, designed to confuse and mislead, to turn a real event into a modern myth. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated the power of human memory. They could classify the documents, hide the debris, and change the official story. But they couldn't silence everyone. Decades after the event, with the threat of reprisal fading, former military members began to speak out. These were not attention seekers. They were decorated officers, pilots, and intelligence officials who had been silenced for half a century. Their testimonies, given independently, were shockingly consistent. They described handling materials that could be crumpled into a ball, only to unfold on their own without a single wrinkle. They spoke of small, lightweight I-beams engraved with strange, violet-hued symbols that glowed under certain light. And most disturbingly, some whispered of something more than just a craft. They described seeing non-human bodies being transported under the cover of secrecy, packed in crates, and flown off the base. These accounts were detailed, credible, and came from men who had everything to lose and nothing to gain by lying. Their stories were corroborated by civilian witnesses, morticians, and even their own family members who they had confided in years earlier. Yet their testimonies were officially ignored, dismissed as fantasy or faulty memory. But when dozens of credible people, separated by time and distance, tell the exact same impossible story, it ceases to be a fantasy. It becomes evidence. Today, the most critical pieces of the Roswell puzzle remain locked away. Key documents related to the incident are still classified as top secret. Freedom of Information Act requests submitted by investigators and historians are routinely denied, often citing national security concerns. Files that should exist have mysteriously gone missing from the National Archives. Most telling of all, official records from Roswell Army Airfield for that exact week in July 1947 were deliberately destroyed. The official reason? Routine disposal. But these weren't ordinary administrative papers. These were the base's outgoing and incoming communications logs, teletype transcripts, and operational memos, the very documents that would have recorded every order, every report, every frantic phone call made in the immediate aftermath of the crash. You don't routinely destroy the records of the most significant week in a military base's history. You destroy them when they contain a truth you need to bury forever. The missing files are not a clerical error. They are a smoking gun, a clear indication that a deliberate, high-level effort was made to erase the Roswell incident from the official record. This brings us to the fundamental question that hangs over this entire event. If nothing extraordinary happened in Roswell, why the extreme measures? Why are key files still classified 75 years later? If it was just a weather balloon, why were civilian witnesses and military personnel threatened into silence, their lives shadowed by intimidation for decades? Why did the U.S. military react with such unprecedented urgency mobilizing an entire base to secure a few scattered pieces of rubber and foil. And most importantly, why systematically destroy the official records from a week they publicly claimed was completely unimportant. The actions of the government and military simply do not align with their explanations. The secrecy, the lies, the intimidation, and the destruction of evidence all point to something far bigger. They weren't just covering up a fallen balloon. They were containing a revelation. So what really fell in the New Mexico desert that night? Was it a secret military craft, a next-generation weapon so advanced it was mistaken for something otherworldly? Was it a classified experiment gone horribly wrong, one whose failure had to be concealed at all costs? Or was it the one explanation the government has fought for over 70 years to deny? The answer that so many witnesses have sworn to that we recovered a craft and occupants not of this world. Until the day the archives are finally unsealed and the missing files are recovered, the truth of what happened in Roswell remains locked behind doors that may never be opened. The weather balloon story is a lie. The real story is still waiting. If you're ready to uncover more Forbidden's archives and question the official story, subscribe to the True Story Files, and let us know in the comments what you believe really fell in Roswell. Thanks for watching.